Val will not be here today due to some scheduling conflicts. Any personal appeals? John, anything? Okay, no personal appeals, but before we get to Mr. Lieberman and Terry, I just got a couple things to close out. Tree vitalization grant.
Yeah, we sent everything.
And the streetscape grant.
Sent everything. Yeah, so
the last.
I think
we're waiting on a signing.
I think we were. Yeah, there's DCNR. Anything that ever says DCNR. You know, it used to be that they just wanted standard language on a sign, so you could make a sign this big. Now what they've done is they've decided to tell you what the dimensions of their sign is going to be, which is absolutely absurd because
the sign is huge.
The sign is like
no way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? At the fire safety, when you're going to
there's an alley out back. I mean,
at the compost site, if you go,
they don't tell you where.
Right, if you're going to a compost site on the fire training grounds, there's a sign about that. That's how big the sign's going to be. It says donated.
And where are you putting it?
You have to put it
out.
Site.
Yeah.
The site over here?
Yeah.
What, you going to nail it against the VFW?
I guess a tree, I guess. I don't know.
There's no tree big enough to nail a sign against.
If it blows over.
We've been, we've been back and forth with them and tried to explain this to them. And quite honestly, the fact that it was DCNR funds was not our fault. They applied through the county for this,
That's a long time.
Yeah, for the Tree Vitalized program. The county had 3 pots of money that they pulled this fund. It just so happens that the Borough of Emmaus got pulled from the DCNR fund, which means that we have to follow the DCNR part of the rules. So now you're posting a DCNR sign. But if you would have gotten CBG side of their funding or something, that sign won't exist.
Yep. So yeah, a little convoluted situation.
Yeah. So you're
and
posting.
Do they come and approve this sign before they sign?
No. There's actually a certain dealer you have to buy from. Oh yeah.
It's getting better.
Yeah, it's
That's the only bad part. Sometimes about grant money.
Sign probably costs more than the trees.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that right now. I'm going to paint one for you.
I know. I've run into this problem with them before where.
So all the invoices have been sent. I mean, Mr. Clapper told me that it was all done.
Everything's sent. The one thing that was holding us up was, we had to wait because you have to send copies of the canceled checks.
Right.
So we were waiting on one set of canceled checks to come in. My belief is they came in and we should be set to go.
Okay. How much is the sign?
Us, and I don't know. There's a I don't know what the fee is.
I thought it was $80 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much because I don't know. I can find out.
On our agenda for CRD, we had 2009 display items, and Mike's done.
Mike's not here, and he did most of that.
Yeah. So
the only thing is they have a couple things out to be framed. So you'll see a couple things missing from the walls, and they have a couple other things that they want to put up.
But for the most part, it's
that can probably be taken off here.
Yeah, I'll tell Kathy then.
Now I know you're looking at doing something out here, but that's a while away.
Yeah.
This whole hallway here.
And let's go through the Arts Commission.
And that's good for the Arts Commission.
That's a good hallway to look at.
Is the office open downstairs?
My office?
Yeah. Not your office, but Kathy's office.
I have a lock with my keys over here.
All right. I want to get the thing for their presentation. The downtown master plan. But besides that, there's really nothing. All right, so we close it out, and then 2009 items to these. But that's really it for the agenda.
Just waiting on a response for the big grant. So,
okay.
I had to send some more details.
Oh, I thought that was finished.
Yeah. Well, it's all the stuff is gathered and sent, and we're just
Okay.
because of the details, but it could be a couple months.
All right. Well, as you guys know, last meeting we held off on, moving on any other projects until some of these grants were cleaned up, But I think this LERTA situation that was brought to our attention on Monday might launch us into our next projects that we have. So with that said, I want to go downstairs and grab the master plan.
Do you want to do it, or do you know where it is?
It's right in Kathy's office. It doesn't. I'll just run down. And you guys come up to the table. What?
Really? Is that like?
Yes.
You're welcome to use this one.
Is that colored?
Yeah, this one is colored.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one I want.
See, you walk downstairs, nothing. Go ahead.
This is the one, 4th Street, right?
Oh, yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I didn't read the details.
This is just the full
And this is
bit
the
of
4th Street one that I was looking at. This is what I was looking at. This is 4th Street. Yep. Yeah, I have, man. It's crazy. Yeah, save money with this one. All right. Hey guys, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Well, real quick, just wanted to say I went on website or I Googled last night, read over the packet, everything, really interesting. So I saw City of Lancaster. There was a Franklin Town or Franklin Borough has a LERTA. There was a whole bunch of PA towns.
Yeah,
I should
across
say.
the state, there's a number of them that have used it, both presently and in the past, depending on how the development.
Yeah, City of Lancaster, 2009, they began theirs. Franklin, theirs is in effect now. The City of Lancaster, the one thing that really jumped out to me, remember when Mr. Lavenberg said, hey, can you do the whole town? Yeah, it looked like they almost did the whole town, because of the way the map was drawn out.
City of Lancaster needs salt redone.
I don't know their situation, but it just...
It's almost like the city of Reading.
Lancaster had, if you follow history, had a very vibrant downtown, and then as tourism started, it kind of branched out from the center of the town outward, and the center of town did become underutilized. I'm going to try to be politically correct, but underutilized. So they needed a major reinvestment. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but that Wilkes-Barre downtown was under there also, which would have been from about the train station area, and you follow that road to the new bypass they put in and bring not under a bunch of negative warehouses. I'm pretty sure that fell under the LERTA program. Don't hold it.
Got it.
But obviously that was successful up in that area. The one that I know actively is definitely Easton. I believe got theirs approved for only part of Easton, and I believe it's the part from 78 down to the train trestle. If you go back there, there's some commercial stuff back there.
Yeah.
There's a
Underneath the
fireworks
trestle, you're
display.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I know where you're at.
I'm pretty sure that's the area where they did that. And I'm not positive that was finalized yet, but that's the area that I mean was being applied for, if that helps at all.
My question is, why LERTA for Emmaus? One of the questions I had. I mean, from anybody, it's just a question I have.
Well, overall, what we're trying to do is provide some business incentives or some incentives to bring individual businesses in or to help the existing businesses do their expansions and growth. So that's the overview. And what we're finding is there's several programs underneath. This LERTA program is one. The small business or the revolving loan pool that we talked to Leon County about last night, and we were right, Shane. They're not easy to talk to.
Go figure. That on the record.
So those are two programs we're looking at, and really to get this off the ground, it's going to take a lot of work, but it's very
Okay.
effective. Howard's done them a few times. I've been through the whole routine with him. We've identified the properties we thought would best serve this. Actually, we wanted to show that to you. I'd like to show this to Brent as well. But I think it took us like 2 or 3 different attempts.
Okay. I was gonna say.
This is, it's all we for. Yeah, but this is included. The strip malls on both sides would be included. And then as we started to identify the underutilized and developable properties, we noticed that there was a good chunk here, a little bit of a break, and then it kind of picks up here and brings it all the way down here. All of this would be what we think is eligible for the Borough program.
So it's
So it is pretty extensive. This obviously, no.
So you don't do just sections, you're just looking for a whole path?
What we're
Like,
going
I'm
to do is
just
do it by
thinking,
parcel. We're actually going to
yeah,
go in.
how do they break them out?
Well, I mean, just to give you kind
This
of
is all commercial properties that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, you'll actually see my handwriting and Jim Farnsworth's handwriting on here, because as they were going through and identifying businesses, Jim and I sat here with them, and it was actually kind of, and Jim obviously was really the master of who could identify most of the businesses, but as you're going through, you can kind of, you know, this is kind of how your town's, when you really kind of look deep into it, how your commercial and industrial part of your town is set up and falls out. And you know, when we looked at, you know, as you started naming businesses, it was an entire section over here, and then, you know, and then Cintas was over here, and then you had Borough property, and then that big Rodale property that's not used anymore, which I think one of the schools is moving into. And then, you know, you keep on going down, and then you have, you know, at the end of this road, you know, that whole industrial building.
The warehouse?
Yeah.
Up there?
And it just seemed like it just kind of moved right into the industrial complexes, which, you know, we get into, the Rodale, sorry. And then they started looking at what about some other commercial areas, and they really identified this corridor out here heading out of town towards the turnpike, and I think up to CVS area, I think is what they looked at. And there was one big complex across from the Emmaus.
That's the old Rodale building?
No, Dale's up here. This is what, oh, that's the old out-of-park store.
Oh, okay, on Ridge?
On Ridge.
Oh, the one on Ridge Street. Oh, I know.
Is that still for sale?
This is the cemetery.
Yeah. Okay. I'm talking. Yeah, I'm sorry. Where's the Emmaus? Right here.
Right.
Right here's the Emmaus. So this building
that
across
building, yeah, the
from
Rodale
That's the
building.
old Rodale building. Yeah.
from the Emmaus.
Did we take that one out of the equation?
I don't know. There were too many highlights and too many X's. I don't.
Did somebody move in there, or that's still vacant?
Yeah, I thought somebody moved on the ground floor.
So when they started identifying the properties, it just kind of, you know, it kept going with, you know, this is kind of, some of this is probably worn down a little bit. You know, this whole commercial area over here is worn down a little bit. These strip malls are kind of, I mean, they could use some facade improvement type of things. It just kind of, and really your industrial complexes, I mean, they are not state-of-the-art looking buildings. And some of them are completely underutilized. So, you know, as they were going through the map, now I'm not telling you whether you should go with the Florida program or not, that's not what I'm saying, but as we were identifying the properties, that's just kind of, as we're identifying the major commercial properties, and notice they stayed out of the downtown. You know, nothing in the downtown was identified. But as they're going through it, it just kind of ended up being this, I guess you could say the whole southern end is the way that it felt. So that's kind of I think the madness behind the map. I don't know that I think our words back then is if council is in favor of this, obviously you guys need to examine this map.
Yeah.
And decide what property areas you would be interested in keeping under that. Yeah, we
properties or just regions? This
well,
is
you could.
region.
Well, yeah. Well, we ended up doing, because one thing that Jim and I wanted to be careful of is what we didn't want to do on our end is if you're going to do this, we don't want to say, well, you know, John's auto parts store is here and Jim's grocery store is here, and you know what, he could really use a project. So we'll name Jim's store over here. You know, we try
Almost like
to.
the Niz.
Well, yeah.
Worse than that, it becomes semi-spot zoning.
Right, and that was the thing is you don't want to do any kind of spot zoning. I mean, we were trying to stay out of that. So in the way that things were kind of laid out, it ended up just kind of flowing, except for that big building across, which is almost half a block. That's a large.
Oh yeah, the Rodale building.
Yeah, that's a large building, and then there's like a whole
That's
block.
the
It's
whole
literally a whole
block.
block right here, which we felt that it's an entire block.
But did the Granite place buy that? Prestige?
It was for sale.
Well, yeah. Now remember, as we were going through this wasn't about who could buy something or who could sell something or who could fix it up. It was really about identifying buildings in the town that could be something that would be worthwhile. Just because this is named under your LERTA zone, if LERTA was to happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's ever going to do anything there. They would still know. This is where your expertise comes in. They would still pay their property taxes.
Yeah.
But I guess my understanding of what you presented to us was if they fix that building up, and that's a building in your LERTA, if they were to do something that would increase the taxes on that building, and let's just do low numbers right now. Right now, you pay $1,000 on that building for property taxes. If they were to put $1 million into it, and their taxes were going to raise $1,000 over whatever the next year. Next year, they would pay $1,100 because
It goes up
it'd go like up by 10%. I think is what that shows.
The first year will be 0. Second year will be 10%.
When I say the first year is 0, that's from the time they start till it's assessed, it's a no man's land because so that's why we call it year 0.
Okay.
The first full year, you'll see a 10% tax.
So if their taxes were to double, that they would only pay in year 1. They would pay $1,100, and then year 2 they pay $1,200, and year 3 they pay $1,300, up to whatever
$2,000.
Yeah, they end up paying. It'd take 10 years to get there, but they'd still pay what their original assessment was. Now, if taxes go up, their taxes still go up. It's the assessment.
The assessment on
that.
And it's the percentage. The LERTA abatements are percentages. So it's a 10% or a 20% abatement. So if the taxes go up, it becomes 20% of the new tax number. You're not locking it in at that. We use your example of 1,100.
Right.
So there's
if taxes were to stay the same for 10 years.
Yeah. It also doesn't have to be. Understand? It doesn't have to be for 10 years. There is.
I've seen 7.
I've seen it down as low as 5. When Bethlehem did it, they actually did split scale. They did renovation versus new construction. 5 years for renovation, 10 years for new construction.
Yeah, I've seen that split too in my search.
Yeah, and
It seemed like that was pretty popular to do that.
yeah. And the state has left by ordinance, has left that determination extremely flexible. You can do all kinds of creative things with it, but the only thing the regulation said is you cannot exceed 10 years. That was the limitation of that.
And if you guys, if LERTA is something that council ends up wanting to do, you could say, well, we don't want any of this. You could take this map, rip it up, and throw it out and design your own map.
Sure.
This map was
This is just an idea.
Well, yeah, this was we sat down with 3 or 4 people and we just started naming businesses and kind of areas of like what was in this business area over here. That's really what how that meeting went. And I think, to my knowledge, I think we hit everything we could. But of course, that was just the 3 or 4 people that were sitting in the room that day. So I guess there were probably 5 or 6. Some of your board members were in there, right? Yeah.
I thought it was pretty thorough, though.
Yeah. Well, we spent some time on it. It wasn't.
Yeah, and then we went out for a ride afterwards to verify. The other thing, I guess, to mention too, you're writing, if you decide to do a LERTA ordinance, my suggestion to you was to consider something not less than 3 years for the first time. This can take a year to get it up and running. at the end of the period, whatever that is, you need to go for renewal. So theoretically, and it happened in Bethlehem, again, you could change your area. So you could start with something big and start shrinking it down or moving them around.
Okay.
The only issue you have is down the block is a school district. You have to get them, the county is going to be relatively easy. They don't read these maps. They're going to rely on you. But the school district would be more inclined to look at your switches. But if you thought that, I heard you say there's some other projects and this could trigger it. If your other projects, for example, were specialized over in here, then maybe for right now you just do it over here as one of the incentives to get this part of the project moving. And sometime down the road, if it was successful, then you can inch it over. Or conversely, you do the whole thing and next year you just, or 3 years from now, you decide to cut areas out that they've been developed. So those things are all flexible. Once you've got the basic concept down and once you've identified, now, if you read the Bethlehem ordinance, I left a little piece of it in there, they did a meets and bounds description. So they said, go to the pin 50 feet.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Talking about pins.
Well, I will tell you that the aggravation was that when they surveyed the city of Bethlehem, the entire world was included because the beginning point and the end point were not the same point. So we went through all kinds of hell. We have to have a GIS specialist who would help us. What I suggested to you is tax parcels are so easy to deal with. We can overlay this map to the county and come up with parcels. It's the only reason why I suggested parcel numbers. Otherwise, you've got to have somebody sit out here and read the pinpoints and hope, pray like hell that they're accurate, and more than likely find out that they're not. So you adding and taking away properties is a relatively easy process under either circumstances, but it's a lot easier, in my opinion, with the tax parcel numbers.
Well, I know the other question I had was, do you have anybody that's like in the forefront of your mind, like what kind of properties? Like for example, let me give you a little story. I was telling Terry this kind of like really neat story that just a few weeks ago, not knowing that you guys are working on this, really, I went down and looked at our South Side master plan. Kind of planning out for the future. What can we do as a CRD committee and for the borough, for the livability, continue that thrive in the whole economic development. And one area in our South Side master plan is on South 4th Street. Where the field is, Jeff?
Up in here.
Yeah, there's 2 vacant buildings up there.
Yeah, they're bothering me, those two.
And there's also some other land there.
Big mess of
Yeah,
land.
it kind of.
Yeah, and there's one that's active. This one's an active one, and then these are 2 dead ones.
Right, and there's a lot of land there.
There is a lot of land.
And that was the place that I was like, okay, what, I really want to try to do something here, like in the sense of, get a developer in there, or
Somebody's
commercial.
dumping there now.
I know Jaflo.
Yeah,
Jaflo's been in there.
Yeah, they're chipping and dumping mulch and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if
they have the right to do that, but
That area is identified and it's highlighted in there.
Right. So, I understand that we don't want to spot zone, but this is where a beginning area would be right here for me personally.
Me too.
I don't know how you would feel about Jeff, but
no, that's bothered me for years. I mean, I've
mean,
looked
it's
at
land
it
just
several
sitting there.
times. It can be used. The buildings are in decent shape if you can clean them up. But
Well, there's, on that note, there are a number of economic development tools that are available that have little to no cost to the municipality for promoting that type of thing. For example, for those buildings, through LDDC, you can have a phase 1 done, so that the phase 1 is finished and on record now of what is or is not a problem. Now, it takes
what's
the time.
LVDC?
We have economic development.
I'm
sorry. I'm just so used to the acronym.
No.
I know what they are.
So through their land recycling program,
Mhm.
they'll do a phase 1 on a property to make it, we always heard those terms shovel ready. So
Yep.
there's a number of state programs that can provide that shovel readiness, if you would. And so for a target area, those
Yeah.
things work well. And then if you're looking for a developer, then getting it all set to be accessible to some of the state bond money, for development type money, which is not taxpayer money,
Brown, is this Brown?
That might be a brownfield.
I thought
it is.
Well,
I thought
well,
it
here,
qualified.
I mean, as I looked at the criteria, there's 14 different categories.
Oh, yeah.
I
You
mean,
could-
you're talking unsafe, unsanitary, and overcrowded. So this vacant lot right now is unsafe. It's unsanitary because people go up and, you know, do whatever they do there. You know, we're looking at different things, economically and social undesirable land. So there's a homes up in that area that, you know, they're kind of done looking at that property.
You could, if you read that set of definitions, you could end up with the whole city in there if you wanted to get abstract about it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying this falls so much,
Absolutely.
this is like our prime, like I think about it, I go, that is primary. But I don't know, Terry, you might think differently, you might think a different spot is.
No, I agree with you. I mean, this has always been on everybody's mind. Now, isn't this the same spot where Carl Valera's group was going to put some townhouses?
Yeah,
That was the same, it was pretty much like this.
yep. Yeah.
And that didn't go through because,
I don't know.
I think that was, it didn't have anything really to do with us per
I
se.
think it did. I think it was age qualified, low income.
Well, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, there was some zoning issues.
There was zoning issues with light industrial.
Yeah, but I think it was because of what they were trying to design it for. I think it had something to do with age qualified. Because that's why you have an ordinance in front of you for this over here.
Right. But this primarily was because it was half of it, if you look at the property, and half of it's light industrial, the other half's residential, basically.
Well, the
Zoning
residential.
wise. For zoning wise.
Zoning wise, yeah, the residential is behind
So,
it.
you know, they would have to, you know, basically what they showed here, half the properties would be in, you know, L&I area.
Yeah, I mean, if you were picking zones, that would be one of the places I would focus on cleaning up or put it on your list, because it's just an eyesore. It's wide open, it's not gated, it's not locked.
Right.
It's just a terrible place. Buildings could be, you know, cleaned up, and you could do some neat things in there if you had the funding. But- And I don't even know who owns the property. There's a sign
there's
there.
a sign.
There's a
number,
sign.
Yeah.
And I never called one.
I guess the only thing I don't want to do is just pick one spot and say,
Right.
okay, we're just.
No, but I think what he's saying, that's one of the main,
Right.
when you did your presentation at council, that was the first spot that kind of popped into my head was, you know, there's one spot that could qualify for something to get, you know, put it on the list here to get this thing cleaned up. It's definitely not utilized at all. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of other little spots all over the place that nobody's using. You know, this spot definitely is an eyesore for probably the residents in that area.
And I think, you know, from a marketing point of view, and I'm not trying to be too selfish, but if your master plan says, what's our dream of what Emmaus looks like? When you tell me an eyesore, to me, that's a prime property for some form of incentive to reduce the eyesore. You know, even to the point of, you know, maybe LERDA's not the thing, maybe a facade program, commercial facade program is, because if it looks pretty, there's a better chance of marketing it. But I think that's what you have to look at it. Well, I don't know the property.
Definitely doesn't look pretty.
But, you know, those would be the things to me that would, what you're using this to do is it's a tool to get people to come back in and say, it's worth my investment because I'm going to get this return on my investment, whether it be tax abatement or brownfields money or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think the things work together. If this was the target, if you decided to do LERDA, I would also suggest that we sit down and talk about some of the other tools that you could then market this and say, we have this
Right,
property.
the right
that we-
company and the right business that
Yeah,
can
'cause
come in and do something.
I guess that's where I get lost, to be honest with you, is how do we get, you know, how does that, you know, benefit a developer coming in? You know, how do we get that out there? Is that? you
Well,
know,
it's a matter of all the different types of marketing. LEDC, again, you know,
Yep.
they have a bank of properties, and your property is right there along with LVIP7's property and Allentown's NIS property. So what you want to do is start adding, when you list this property, start adding more and more incentives onto it to say, well, I can go to the NIS or I can go to Emmaus. And what's the benefit to doing that? And that's what we're trying to build. You're competing with 3 municipalities that have many, many more resources that they can fall upon, CDBG dollars and economic development departments and all those things.
Right.
the theory is that LBEDC is supposed to be representing the Emmaus and the Baths and the Whitehalls, so that as we develop marketing for this project, on the side of the sheet, you're going to talk what kind of incentives we have. Well, it's alerted district, and it's brownfield, and we've done phase 1, and we've talked to DCED about the bond issue, whatever that happens to be. So that it becomes marketable. Now, it still means finding somebody out there that's willing to invest those kind of dollars, but it's a marketing tool. It's nothing more, nothing less, and however many dollars we have to market it, and whatever the best vehicle to market depends. I'm dealing with the same thing in Whitehall right now with the dairy. An extremely difficult property to market, much harder than this.
Yeah.
Much harder than this. And it becomes, okay, how do we get somebody to look at something beyond what Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton are pushing right now? And God knows Easton is pushing really hard at everybody. So we're looking for those things that at least can be. Allentown at least can shoot itself in its foot by itself. Easton is doing a much better job of marketing what they have down there. And so it's how do we compete with that? And that's what I say, it's a marketing thing. When somebody looks at the property, you want to have somebody right on hand, Shane or yourselves or whoever, to whip out the piece of paper and say, well, this property has all these things going for it. So, it may have been nice down here, but look how much money you can save here, look what we can offer you here. I think that's the attitude that you have to look at it to make it appropriate.
Give incentives to bring businesses in.
Yeah.
But
Heidi, so do you suggest, let's take this map for example, that we would do a phase 1, 2, 3 kind of, like I look at this, I go phase 1, 2, and 3 or something of that nature. Do you suggest?
I don't think you can really.
Or do you just, and when can it go into effect? That's the other question I have. So, okay, we want to do this 2013. I mean, do we pass the ordinance to?
If you guys adopt it, you're just step number 1. You would be the easy step for them. It's the school district, which I've already gotten a phone call from them on it.
They don't understand them.
And
will you be doing a presentation for them as well, if invited?
That's something that you guys will have to. I was asked to submit the same presentation to the school board. I did that. I got a phone call and he said, well, we don't do that. And we went through the conversation and finally said that it would have to be something that the borough asked them to do. They were not opposed to doing it. They were opposed to me coming in and giving them the one-on-one class.
they left me a message.
Probably yesterday?
No, this afternoon.
Oh.
They left me a message.
And the school board is, you can do this with any one of the 3 taxes, but it really becomes effective with all 3. The school tax obviously is the biggest. Without the school tax, the value of your incentive drops off tremendously. Again, they weren't objecting to it from the conversation I had. They were objecting to having it presented in the format that I was doing at the time.
Okay.
But in order for you to have it can become effective whenever everybody gets the approvals. Our target dates were to make it January 1. Theoretically, where we are right now, we could make it by January 1. Lehigh County is the last of the 3 people to get to vote on it. So they want the ordinance from you approved, subject necessarily to theirs. And the school district is going to want yours, and then the county's going to want the school districts also. So there's, and there's a couple of people.
Their power.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of them require a double reading and how many of them require a public hearing. All those are going to affect your timeline.
Well, it said that at least one public hearing has to be held.
Yeah.
From what you're.
And you guys, as the municipality sponsoring, have to have a public hearing. I don't know if the school board, by their regulations, would require a public hearing.
Or Lehigh County.
Lehigh County does, but Lehigh County takes care of that. I checked with Cindy on that already.
Well, talking about that, I have written here, it says, approval of some or all, and is that just a typo, or is it some, or?
No, that's right. You can do.
So who or what entities?
Municipality, the borough.
Yep.
The school district and the county.
Right. So, but it's saying approval of some. So can it just be the school and us?
Yeah.
Without the county.
Absolutely. But then the county tax would not be abated, obviously.
Okay.
So
I understand.
only the ones that are in the plan get abated.
But that doesn't have any effect on
Doesn't change the percentage, but it changes the taxes, because in that $1,000 a year tax you're paying here, one piece of it is the county tax, smallest of the pieces, but some portion, excuse me, is the county tax. So if the county didn't buy in for any reason, then you qualify that way. That's why I say not having the school district becomes almost a futile case, because between your local tax and the county tax, I'm sure it's minimal compared to what the school district is getting. So it wouldn't have a positive, I don't think it would have a very positive impact on the whole thing.
Got it. You got anything, Jeff?
No, it makes sense. What about that renewal you mentioned, the 3-year renewal? How does that work?
The ordinance has a limited lifetime, so you write it for 2 or 3 or 4, whatever years. At the end of that period, you've got to go back and ask for a new one. Anybody that was approved under the LRTA during the ordinance carries through for their entire LRTA period.
Right.
So once you've been accepted, it stays, and it travels with the property, not with the owner. So this property gets LRTA. If it's sold 10 times, the LRTA piece follows its path, whatever that schedule is.
Okay.
But let's say we do 2 years, so come next December, if somebody doesn't renew it, then there's no additional LRTAs available to the municipality.
Okay.
So it means going back as long as you want to keep going back to it. Usually the renewals are a heck of a lot easier to deal with than the initial one, especially with the school district. If you get, I'll tell you, the first project gets under your belt, everybody feels a lot better about it, because all of a sudden they say, well, gee, we had this property, wasn't earning anything, next to nothing.
Yeah, now
and
it's
now
earning
we've got 100 jobs, and so it's really tough to deal with. But to answer your question a little further, I hate to drag this out, when it said some of them, in Bethlehem, in the LVIP 7 happens to have a quirk in it. It sits in 2 school districts. It sits in the Bethlehem area school district and the Saucon Valley School District. Saucon Valley never had any commercial. They were generating next to nothing in that part, so it was a slag mine, a slag field. So we went in there and everybody said, why are we doing this and why are we doing that? It was very simple. If you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen on that land, because they'll buy a lot here instead of over here, because this is the Bethlehem area school district. And so the first time around we had a really tough time. They built the warehouse, which ended up not working. The people ended up going bankrupt, but the property is taxable to them. Now all of a sudden everybody's saying, gee, before we were getting $100, now we're getting $10,000. So it was worthwhile. So getting it renewed became a very, very easy process. And that's why it says some or all. In that particular case, we needed 4 letters, or four approvals.
Okay.
And actually 2 separate ordinances, because the Saucon School District ordinance reads differently than the Bethlehem Area School District, because it reads different areas. Thank God for LVIP 7, they had the meets and bounds map for me to do.
Got it.
But there was that particular case we ended up with a couple of 4 years ago, 5 years ago, God, 10 years ago, in Bethlehem's in 2 counties. So the LRTA ordinance required an additional approval from the part that was in Northampton County versus the part that was in Newton County. So that's why it says all.
Now, I was just under at the presentation, again, it's just questions I had. I thought all 3 had to be bought in to make it happen.
No, unlike some of the others, TIFs and KOZs, those all require unanimous consent.
Okay.
But if you get all 3, it's much more attractive.
Right.
Obviously.
No, we want to do that, yeah, absolutely. I was just.
No,
I thought
I'm glad it's better that you understand how the program works than to guess at it.
One of the things was cost to do a study. I guess, would it be considered a study?
No, the cost that I had mentioned to you is for somebody to draft the actual ordinance, finalize the map, draft the ordinance, make the presentation to the 3 municipalities, and go to the various meetings. Some of that I've done so far pro bono. And it's a lot farther than we've done. But at some point in time, you need to hire somebody. And I may be very honest, I was planning on, if we put it out for RFP, being one of the ones to bid on it. But that's just my own thing. But it's the time that needs to go through the public hearings, the actual hearing, and drafting the ordinance, which is, I don't want to make it sound like it's a big deal. The ordinance is half written. But the meetings, it's a lot of meeting time, the presentation stuff.
So that's where the cost comes in.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying between 6,500 and 7,000? Is that
I think so.
what you said on Monday night? I don't think that would be a RFP, correct?
Contracted services.
Contracted services, yeah, so.
And not to mention it's under $10,000.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to keep it under $10,000. I'm working on Whitehall too, so the same process, the exact same presentation, the cover's gonna change. And for the
So is there a partnership that could be obtained between us and Whitehall that you may be able to somehow split the cost? Or?
Well, when I came up with the numbers I did, that was the split. I was just.
That is the split?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But if you use our firm, I'm willing to live by that even if Whitehall doesn't go ahead with it, is what I'm telling you. If we're talking about dollars and cents, I can even make it more attractive to you. If you do a 3-year alert, I can do something where it's just an installment for 3 years, 1 year for each alert. I'm willing to do that. Price would be a little bit higher because I got to cover my cost, but
Sure.
yeah, but I still under the $10,000, and I think I can split it out that way. I don't know whether Whitehall's going to proceed with it or not. I have another meeting on September 3rd, I think it is, see how far they're going. I wouldn't tie this to any other municipality at this point, only because you have different school districts that you deal with. I was just trying to make it cost effective across the board. And again, Whitehall was given a quote for doing their alert of $29,000, which I said was absolutely ridiculous. You've seen how much time, well, Shane knows how much time we spent, and I can tell you about how much time we have got to go to 4 more meetings and 2 public hearings. So, we're talking 40 or 50 hours for the $29,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I couldn't
How do you do
justify
that?
that.
How do you make that quick?
Now, well,
I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong here.
And they're all programmed.
You're in government, but I'm in consulting, and I can't do that.
Oh, what's that supposed to mean?
I'd work 300 hours a year and be rich.
So I have a real problem with that, and I've not kept that a secret. I think that, somewhere in that much lower number is where it needs to be.
So that's please forgive me, I'm
No,
not trying to, but is that the lowest that you would go?
I have not put a pencil to it.
Okay.
I was waiting to find out whether we're going to. I wouldn't even want to quote you. If you decide you want to go ahead with it, then the very next thing before you charge a nickel is for paying to talk to the school district and make sure the school board is at least going to give us an opportunity.
Okay.
Then we can sit there and figure out how many hours and we can talk about it. But I can promise you it will be somewhere in that range. It will not exceed $10,000. By design, it was not to be $10,000.
Yes.
And once we agree upon a number, anything takes beyond that is my problem.
The reason I ask these numbers is because we're getting ready to do our budget workshops coming up for the budget and finance. I don't know, I think they're starting next month, September or October. And so if we have a hard figure that we can maybe punch in there, the only it's the $6,500 or $7,000 study out of a $13 million budget, it's kind of nominal, but for us it sometimes is a big deal. Sometimes it can be a big deal. Anyway, that's why I just bring that out.
I'll be happy to put a pencil to it to find and make it finite. But again, I think that the big issue before anything would be whether the school district is in what's in the front door.
Okay.
It won't change the number. I can figure out the number assuming the school district is going to, because conversely, if the school district doesn't, I would imagine you would proceed.
Well, just so you know, so I don't want.
I think the way you get through the front door, they might kick you out the back door.
I'm not taking that chance. We felt that last night.
Well, I mean, isn't the one selling point to the school district, meaning, if you're going in there, is that these are properties that right now are just not utilized?
That's.
I mean,
they're getting the same benefit as we will be.
as anybody else would. I mean,
Yeah.
if we can fill this, and fill the buildings over here, I mean.
That's been the argument I say all along. As
Just to
long
say
as
I
these
wouldn't
buildings
wanna do
sit
that.
there like there are, there's no gain.
There is no gain.
There's no gain
It's
right
a
now.
loss. It's always a loss.
And the beauty about, I mean, like I think the thing that attracts me to the LORTA is that you'd still be getting the taxes that you get today. So,
Right, there's no 10-year zero like a KOZ.
right, but that's what I'm saying. Versus a KOZ where it's 10 or 12 years, whatever they decide of tax-free land. And I've lived in a municipality. Well, Berwick was like that. I had a $4 million budget. The biggest chunk of my town was right in the middle. It was an industrial complex that hadn't paid taxes in 10 years. So you've got blight in your community. You've got people struggling to pay their taxes, and these guys in the middle were sitting scot-free. I mean, The attractiveness of the LRTA is you'd still be collecting taxes
Well,
from them, and it would be
right.
incrementally rising, but
Yeah, how attractive is
Still
that
getting
to a
tax
developer or to a business? The LRTA?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're saying maybe you attach a TIF to it or do
Well,
other programs.
Quick economic development lesson.
Yeah.
TIF is only good for public improvements. You can't use a TIF, if somebody was building this building or renovating this building, you can't do a TIF here. The only TIF would be valid for your water, sewer lines, your curbs, your road, that kind of stuff. So TIF doesn't apply, and TIF, the company can pay taxes. The municipality doesn't get the taxes. Those taxes are used to pay off the debt. So that's the way the TIF works.
okay.
KOZ is complete tax exemption for the period of 10 years. Kutztown University did a research study through the rural Pennsylvania.
They take off.
And-
They take off.
That's right. The end of 10 years, when the KOZ's up, pack their bags, they move to someplace where there's another KOZ,
You
or
see
it
it.
is.
It's happening all over the
So,
place.
and then you end up with built even worse here. You have 10-year-old buildings that are now totally vacant. They have public back
They have a year or two left on the term, and they're starting to find new
Because, Jeff, you
locations.
brought that up where you're saying those two buildings that are up there, if they're cleaned up, you know, because the one thing that I'm running into is not new construction, but remodeled.
Remodel construction.
And so, you know, that was another reason that I was thinking that area.
And you can differentiate, as I said, in the word. You could say, new construction, we're going to do 10 years, and remodels is 5.
Right.
My question to you is, and the question came up today, is I don't know how much empty land you have that's developable, and the old buildings are the ones you're really trying to push the renovation on. So I wouldn't cut that too short because you lose the incentive.
Yeah, I really think
Yeah.
if you guys, I mean, this is something you go after, he's absolutely right. You've got to look at it from a point of redevelopment more than anything. You know, of taking what you have and transforming it rather than thinking that somebody's going to come in here and build a, 3-city block complex. That's not going to.
That's what I was on this, just lump it all together. New construction and remodel. I mean,
The other very, very important thing to keep in mind that a lot of developers will understand, but you may not, and that is, this is an assessment-based change. So one of these companies goes in and puts an office inside the building, zero impact on the assessment. Puts a bathroom in, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but put a bathroom in advance the assessment, especially if they never pull a building permit. So there are certain things that are going to happen that are not going to, that are make the building usable for the company, make it attractive for workers to be there. It's absolutely no impact on the taxes, which means your LRTA was the incentive to get them in the door. It didn't question nickel. It didn't question nickel because those improvements weren't going to add any value to the building anyway. The value becomes secondary.
right, that's not the.
It's, depending on how, please excuse the word, dilapidated the outside of the building is, it is conceivable that these owners may have gone and they had asked for asked for the assessments to be appealed. And,
Okay.
So then when they, well, but that's,
I've seen the appeals. There's a lot.
but that's a good thing though, because when they go in now, when they brick point and put new windows in, now it is going to trigger the assessment.
Oh, got it.
So there's a plus to that. Not a great plus, but it's a plus. So I keep those kind of things in mind also. It's a really powerful tool because unlike a lot of the other ones, except KOZ does it, this is a cash flow issue for the contractor, for the developer. He's not going to pay the extra tax those years, so that's money in his pocket. Which, by the way, in the NIS, it's interesting because the NIS, they actually do pay the tax, and then at the end of the year, some of that tax money, depending on the formulas, will go back to pay their debt or something like that. But during the period of time, they actually have to lay the dollars out, which a lot of the developers moving into downtown don't understand yet. This is not, it's not tax abatement, it's tax deferral, which is a little different. This is an abatement program. And now you've learned everything I know about the NIS, because it changed on a day-to-day basis.
Oh,
So,
The locations change day to day too.
All right.
yeah. Please do not decide that you want to
That's great. We're good there.
I think the new ordinance, the way they wrote it, kind of precludes anybody but Allentown.
Wow. Well, what's the next step? I mean, what would
What would
Terry
you recommend? I mean,
If you feel comfortable that you think you're going to bring it to your board and get your board to approve it, then I would say your next step is to have the discussion with the school district and at least see if we can get in and have the same kind of meeting with them. If we get them, the county's already, the groundwork has already been laid. Sidney Feinberg and I did that a month ago. And at least the county is aware that there's potentially an application coming from Emmaus and Whale.
We got a relationship that I think is a really good relationship that we can,
Ooh,
with Cindy and,
Yeah.
right, but beyond,
well, I'm
Yeah.
I'm pulling out stay with me.
okay, I'll stay with you.
I'm assuming the school.
You and I have been in front of the rest of them firsthand.
I know,
Terry got that treatment last night.
Stay with me.
And I don't want to say the school district said no, they just said no to me coming
Yeah.
in. So I think you just need to clarify it with them. If that's the case, then you need to decide to move forward with, a contract and having the stuff drafted, and then nailing down the map.
Okay.
The map is probably going to be the most horrendous process in the world, because you've got 8 people there, and what tends to happen is, I like this property, I like that property.
Well, that always happens.
Yeah, it does, and that's why I say that's going to be the worst. The ordinance is boilerplate, effectively, and the presentations are boilerplate. I can do it off the back of my hand. The map, that's going to be the next step, and to get a map that everybody can
Agree on,
Yes,
basically.
and your group here, because I can't imagine the school district, for the most part, picking it apart. I haven't seen that before. It happens a little bit.
I would think the school district would be a yes or a no.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, there's just an up or down. Yeah.
It happened, in Bethlehem, they happened because of Morton Towers. That was the whole discussion there. And obviously that, the LERTA on a Morton Towers type project had horrendous tax implications, especially when they asked for it to be reassessed. I mean, the development happened there were lots of complications, including their concern over the increase in kids coming in. If Morton Towers had done the development, they would have had to build a whole new, damn close to a whole new school.
Well, I can understand
500
that.
or so. So,
I mean,
in that case, the
we're
school
not
district
trying to
did
do
go
that.
through and say, we're willing to do this, but not here.
Yeah.
Okay. Get on with it and move to the next.
We're not
Yeah.
building a big residential
Yeah.
area and stuff like that. We're not doing anything.
So that's why I say, I think it's your map here, and you know your commissioners and then the way the board acts. So that would be the next thing. But I want to make sure that the school board at least is going to entertain a discussion before you spend a lot of time on it, because this will be a couple hours worth of work between identifying the parcels and then somebody coming up with tax ID numbers, which, we can do as part of our fee if we're doing it, but you still need to identify. That's the time-consuming work.
Got it. Any other questions, Jeff, that you
No.
have? I mean, I think
Everything
the
that I need
concept
to
is,
know and-
is, welcoming. And, I mean, you got anything, Terry, that you want? Oh, okay. So
She's not getting pretty
Pretty much know this already?
you're gonna start working, right? But,
It
I
it
guess-
happened the other way around. She hooked me in from the backside.
Terry will do that too. Shane, would you feel comfortable contacting the school, or would you?
Well, I have no problem contacting school.
Would you like me to
Tom,
contact them?
Tom already called me.
It was Tom Paul.
Yeah, Tom already called me, and so, I mean, I obviously already owe him a phone call back, but it's something that I kind of need I don't want to waste their time if they're wasting your time. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
I
I don't want to
understand.
show up and talk to Tom and tell him all about what LERTA stands for, and hey, give Howard Lieberman the time of day at least to present to your board, and then you guys turn around and shoot it down. I mean, that would
Yeah, I agree with
that would be completely and utterly stupid on my part.
I spoke with Dr. Waddell, and he's on board with this idea. So I know from the committee level that if he was here, he would be in favor of something like this. By any chance, can I show this to the school board?
Absolutely.
If
I
see Dr. Stein?
anticipated if the school
I'm going to
board
hand that to
says
Tom
yes.
anyway.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Let's go
just
hand it to Tom.
I don't.
We generated 20 copies in anticipation that they were going to be needed.
Perfect.
The cover doesn't have to change or anything.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think what the vision that I have for this committee is to move forward is projects like this. This is a pretty big project, and I like to see more economic development. We past 4 or 5 years we've done the trees and some other streetscape things. I want to start hitting some areas that are blighted and.
Well, I'd love to talk to you again about, if you, on the LERTA. you know, some of the things you can do
Yeah.
to make a profit like that.
Well, that'd be great,
Yeah,
absolutely,
you
as we
want it to
move
be
forward.
An incentive, to have people come in and clean it all up, and revitalize it, not just bulldoze the whole thing.
Allentown tried that many years ago on the, down near the Hamilton Street Bridge, you know, the bulldozing just didn't pay off for a I mean, it's made the bulldozing company rich.
Yeah, people hauling it out of there.
There's a discussion about doing some more down there right now.
So we meet monthly, so
We've got a presentation coming up your next committee meeting.
we have a presentation coming up?
Yeah,
We do?
Yeah.
Okay.
From who?
Terry's back.
It's kind of an expensive.
She's back?
It's gonna be on the 20, it'll be on the 27th.
Don't I have a presentation? Did we get all that information?
What presentation's that?
The Rodale and all that.
Yeah. No, this is a committee presentation
Oh,
for you guys.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. No, this is different.
But it
No,
does
this-
tie together in a sense.
This is a West End.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've seen that one already.
Yeah.
And, but more
Much more than that.
but more than just that
Uh-oh.
that concept. They presented to me the other day of an idea that they have as far as that entire corridor out that way. So I told them that the next step would be to present to you guys on the 27th.
Okay.
Real quick question, is there any grants available to, if, you know, for the study, $6,500 or $7,000, whatever it may be, say
I'll
$7,000?
research. I don't know of any that are timely. The issue is not whether they're available, because I think some of the municipal grants are available, probably could cover that, but not in a timely manner.
Okay.
So if you were, you know, willing to push this off, then we can look at that. Because through the boroughs and the state boroughs group, I'm forgetting what they pay. There are some grants through that, some planning grants and things of that nature.
There are some.
But in timely fashion, I guess is the key word, huh?
Probably not.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking like, are there study grants out there dealing with brownfields? Or there may be, there might be, but I guess.
Well, the other thing, when you do a study field or brownfield, it's going to be more of.
Well, yeah,
certified
usually it's certified. Yeah, you're right. Usually it's here's the property. It's an old cigar factory. We're going to go and certify that it classifies under brownfield because of X, Y, Z issues. So, your grants. I mean, the word grants doesn't exist nearly as freely as it used to. I mean, that's.
I understand,
No.
but I'm still gonna knock on the door until it's.
Well,
all
heck yeah.
done.
Except for the grant programs just simply don't exist. I
Right.
mean, it's not that they're competitive, it's that they're just not existing. But, I mean, take a look.
Yeah, I'll go through
There might be
the stuff
something.
that I have, which is not totally, I mean, I'm not going to say it's 100% comprehensive.
Yeah, because the reason, I mean, I just, when it comes to studies, and I apologize there, I think you already know where I kind of stand. With the parking study we did, it was $25,000 total. We got a $20,000 grant, I believe, you know, and Borough chipped in $5,000. It was one of those things that it was, okay, we just spent all this money to just say, hey, you don't have a parking issue.
Well,
You know, that's-
I will say that. when
That's
you
where I
asked-
was kind of.
The question you asked me, I was kind of, I didn't know if you evasive, but I don't see this as a study. This is, if
That's
you're
not a
going
study.
ahead with this is to
Okay.
do the project.
You're doing the project.
Yeah.
See, the word study came out, that's why I was just like, oh, okay, we're gonna.
Yeah, this isn't, I think
For a
that,
study to say, oh.
I
do
think
this.
that his,
I think we've done, that was done pro
Okay.
bono. The study part was done
Yeah.
pro bono. Now it's, do you want to do it?
I didn't understand that.
No, that's okay.
I think his $6,500 or $7,000 is actually to get everything to the point where you sign an ordinance and everybody, you know, he's
Okay.
presented all the other levels and all that stuff of, do they want to do it too, type of thing. I think that's what
Yeah.
your charges are basically for. So
Because you know, once we spend, I want to move forward. I mean, Jeff.
Well, once that's done, let's just say, for instance, everybody agrees in a perfect world, and we get all this done, and we have our ordinance, and we are finished with that, and we've picked our areas, what happens after that?
Same ordinance gets brought to the school board.
Right.
They vote on it the same way. And they have to doctor up their ordinance to meet their requirements. They vote on it, then it goes to the county. The county votes on it.
And then it's all done,
And it's done.
And then what happens
Well,
after that?
I'll tell you
This is
one.
what I'm looking
Well,
for is
yeah, I'll tell you what
done.
you do. His work's done.
Right.
He goes away. It really,
Okay.
I mean, as far as what, you know, the study part of it.
10 hours,
But really,
$7,000.
yeah. But really, then it comes down to the borough and our development associations of contacting
selling
realtors.
Okay.
You know, hey, realtors would need to be on top of this. You know, like your
Yeah,
commercial
maybe-
realtors, your
Is that something we go
Work.
through Terry?
oh yeah.
Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, your
But are we solely relying on Terry? That's what I.
oh
That's
no, that's a partner.
Right.
That's a
I
partner.
said, that's where then we need to sit down with LBEDC again.
I was going to say, in your
Okay.
Lehigh Valley Economic Development Groups and your, you know, all the regional economic groups. That way, any business that comes in, you know, if essentially you're trying to draw developers in the Emmaus, they come, most of the big developers will come to the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Group, and they'll say, I want to put in, or I want to move into a 460,000 square foot building, or whatever it might be. What do you have? Well, we have in Easton, we have in Nazareth, you know, whatever it is. And by the way, we have something in Emmaus. Okay, well, first of all, let's look at demographics, so because that's what they'll do. You know, do I have skilled workers? Do I have, you know, all this stuff? And then they'll say, all right, who wants me the most? Because I'm going to, I mean, in their heads, they're going to bring in all this stuff. Who wants me the most? Who has programs that I'm affordable? So that's basically what, you know, as far as drawing in the new people, we have to make sure that they're educated and they understand exactly what we have to offer. And then also, I think you have to market to people that you have in town here. You know, if a Rodale building is within that zone, you know, somebody needs to go talk to the CEO of Rodale and say, look, you know, you're in this zone. We really think that you could do something big here, and by the way, it'll help you out. I think that's the design of LRTA. That's what it does. But it's one of those things where it takes her, it takes the borough, it takes the Lehigh Valley Economic Development, it takes, I mean, it could take the Lehigh Valley or the Lehigh County Housing Corporation if you know, if it's a project they're involved in. It's a bunch of groups that would end up being involved, and it almost turns into a marketing effort type.
It is, it's not almost, it's in it.
So I mean, that's kind of where it would, it really turns into an advertising thing.
And the easier that you make it for the realtor to not have to do the research, the more likely that your property pops up much higher on the list.
And that may be where you call Howard up again and you say, hey, we need you back. Why? Well, we need you to do a presentation to Valley Realtors, you know, and tell them what we've got.
Yeah, the second, I believe.
So
the next council meeting, which would be September 20 or September 4th.
5th. Well, yeah, Tuesday, whatever it is.
Yeah, the 4th. At this point, we don't need any motions at this point. We just need to talk to the school district to see if they're even.
That's my suggestion to you.
Yeah.
It's only a week away, it's 2 weeks.
Yep.
If your committee wants to go forward with this,
Mm-hmm.
I would make a motion to put it on the board in front of council. Because I'm not going to, my fear is to give this gentleman the go-ahead to go present to the school, and then we find out that you two are the only people on council that want to do this thing.
So what you want to do is make a motion to put it on.
Put it on the council, yeah,
floor
put it on the
for
council,
discussion.
yeah, put it on the floor for council
Okay,
to.
that's fine.
The concept?
Yeah.
The idea.
The idea.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
There's no.
Well, to move forward to, yeah, I would say, put it on the floor for council to move forward with the concept and to start talking about possible agreements to move forward with the rest of it. So that way.
But at that time, is there a dollar sign that needs to be with that?
Well, you can ask him to put that in front of you before September 4th.
If you could get that
if you want to.
to us in 2 weeks?
I'll
That would be part of the discussion.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be.
For council.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if council votes no, then, you know,
It's
Yeah,
done.
then it's.
why are we wasting our time with
Correct.
the school?
Yeah.
But if council says yes, you know, then you push the school. See what they have to
Present
say.
to the schools
Right.
in a manner that, you know.
And in the meantime, what I'll do is that I'm going to contact Tom back and I'll tell him that, you know, this is what they presented to us and this is what the program is. I won't give him a
Yeah.
you're behind it or you're not behind it concept. I'll just tell him, the information is this, and this is the design of what LERTA is, and,
I think
councils.
that's one of the problems. He kept saying that they're willing to do a project, and LERTA's not really a project.
Yeah.
He was looking for this, for that property, and that's not what LERTA is.
Right, that's not a project.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do all that simple legwork with him, and then, what he does with it is,
What, do you want to put that in a motion, Jeff?
Yeah, that is a motion. I'll make a motion that we recommend it.
To full council?
To full council for discussion. And then you'll have to put it as a highlight on
Yeah, Kathy will do
your
that.
Kathy.
By Thursday, by noon.
How you like those emails?
With exclamation marks.
I know.
yeah.
Or you're fired.
You're fired.
She's tough, boy.
I know.
Please do.
She puts caps in there and everything.
Make that sunny stuff in again.
All right, Nate, are you seconding that?
Yep. And all is favor?
Aye.
Okay, 2 ayes.
I'm making an aye.
Aye, aye,
Yeah,
aye.
yeah, it would be nice.
EIO.
Okay.
All right, so we'll stay in touch. I appreciate all your hard work, Terry. Thanks for hooking him in there.
Wait till next time.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
Oh, different one.
Great. I think I know what that one's gonna be.
That's pretty cool, it's a project.
It's more than just the original process.
Oh, boy. The whole West End's gonna be lights like Vegas.
Great. That's all we need.
I live in Whitehall.
Oh, was it Prince Harry found out? I guess it's-
Oh, okay. You want Prince Harry down?
We're at the Triangle.
The commentators have been very good. He's single, he was out on his own, they've been really trying to make light of this whole
Like,
thing.
come on.
I read an article last night or this morning, first thing, or maybe it was on Good Morning America or something, but where the UK newspapers absolutely refuse to print anything about it.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is so much different than America,
Yeah.
where you
Oh,
print
yeah.
everything.
Print it all.
You're damned before you even start.
That's it.
That's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. I
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Now my hand's all wet.
That's it. Thank you again for your time.
Take care.
I appreciate it. All right.
Have a good one.
Awesome. Shut it.
So that would be under new business.
Battery died. What are you gonna do?
You know what? I was gonna say something, but I'm not going to.
That would be- Was that under, that's under new business then? Or did you have new business?
That's new business. Because that's new. It wasn't old.
Okay, brand new.
It's very spanking new. All
All right, do
right.
we have any other new business, like,
No.
nothing about what the,
What would you like to have on our new business?
we're not involved in any of that, reconstruction stuff, right? That doesn't fall under.
Such as what?
The Borough Hall?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Jen.
We didn't. Yeah.
Excuse me, although if you guys want to talk about it, you can.
No,
No,
Jen.
I don't know who that falls under after they.
You know, I mean,
talked
The
about it.
HVAC stuff in the past, Jeff,
Yeah.
fell under Jeanette as well
Okay.
when it came to remodeling.
All right, so they have.
yeah, they're the ones that had been seeing, I mean, they had been working with that.
Okay.
No, I'm happy with it. I
Well,
think- I think it'll
there's-
work out. The only question I have is, you need 2 ADA compliant, I thought it said 2 ADA compliant doors, automatic opening doors. I saw that, I thought I saw that, and
No,
I was gonna
no.
ask, I don't think we do.
No,
That's for those guys.
Yeah.
no, and then they don't even, that's not for them to go over, that is for
Okay.
your codes officer to go over.
And then,
When you have an existing building, okay, and this is where your snag for a project like this would occur, is when you have an existing building, especially a building like this one, where it's older and not everything meets code, of course, because it's old. When you do alterations to an existing building, excuse me, depending on the depending on the cost of the project, what the alterations are, the percentage of the alterations, all that fun, like it all adds up, and there's this calculation basically that says it fits under this area of the existing building code. And depending on where that falls, and really, and depending on which code your architect uses, believe it or not, they're allowed to use 2 different codes, which is why the entire building code system is just an absolute screwed up mess. But depending on which one they use, depends on what you have to do along with the project. But the bottom line is, if it fits in a certain area of the code, you may have to do some other modifications other than just your project, which is why people get really ticked off when a codes officer comes and says, no, actually, with your plan, you've also got to do ADA, or you have to improve ADA issues up to 20% of the cost of the project. So if I'm doing a let's just say I'm doing a $10,000 project, I would have to put in up to $2,000 worth of ADA improvements. That's one of them. And I've seen that. I've seen that with a bank was putting, because the code won't allow them to actually put an addition onto their building.
Mm-hmm.
They put the building right next to it with literally like a little walkway, kind of like what the library's proposing, because the borough code or the building code makes it nearly impossible to do something that you want to do, but then it has all these stupid loopholes that says, well, you can do that and connect a little walkway with a breezeway, and it's essentially the same damn thing anyway. But you have to do such and such a percentage of other improvements to it. So, you may not have to do a brand new ADA ramp. You may have to turn all of your door handles into levers. Basically you waste $2,000 of ADA improvements or electric improvement, whatever the alteration level falls under, which quite honestly, I've read that stupid code a dozen times. I can read it a dozen more, and that's why you pay Jim to do it, because he's the one that understands it.
So they're going to be they handle all of that.
Yeah, Jim Farnsworth. You don't just like the drawing that I gave them, and I told the Gen Ag committee, the drawing that I gave you was this is our concept, this is what it would cost to do that, but, and there was the big but, you have to have your official drawing, you have to, whatever that architect says, Jim has to review, and Jim has to say, okay, it falls under this section of the code. By the way, with this section of the code, you have to do this too, which could be a new ADA ramp, because that ADA ramp should really be longer, although you're fine with what you have because it's existing.
Yeah, I thought it was 1 foot for every 4 or something.
Yeah, it's actually a 12-to-1.
12-to-1, that's it.
So there's and then there's a possibility that there's no extra improvements. But that's for
Jen.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about economic development, real quick, under new business, I brought this up to you, Shane, and I called Brian because he is budget and finance, but is potentially reaching out to cell phone or cell tower companies, like such as AT&T and Verizon, for lease. The place I was thinking about is the structures there is a central station, has a big antenna there, repeater for them. Would be one is the reason I was thinking is two reasons. One, it would generate monthly revenue between $500 to $1,000 a month. Number two is that usually you need a generator to run those cell towers. Their generator in the central station now is fairly new, maybe 3 years old. The Borough Hall needs a replacement of this generator here, so that the possibility of us taking that the cell tower being there, generator maybe can run the whole building plus the tower, if it's possible, and us taking that generator and putting it here. So it's a monthly revenue. The structure is there, the site is there, so it won't be really a plight.
So you were reaching out to the...
I didn't reach out to anybody. I just talked to Shane. It was just an idea, but since if we're talking economic development, and I think this is something that maybe we need to pursue. I spoke with Brian. Brian, you know, I just shared the idea with him, and he was like, "Oh, absolutely." And he, I guess he knew somebody that had a contact. You know, I don't know if he reached out to that person or not, but so.
I don't have any other economic.
But that was the idea that I had.
There's plenty of, I mean, there's plenty of ideas. One, I mean, if economic development is a thing that you really want to focus on, which I like hearing a councilman say economic development, obviously it takes dollars, but, you know, it's time and planning. Just like you just did, it's time to start pulling out those plans. When's the last time the borough actually opened this comprehensive plan?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read it?
No.
Nope,
Have you ever looked at the regional comprehensive plan?
once.
You know, I mean,
It's huge.
the problem, I mean, the problem is it's why people don't like studies, because you do studies. I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't do a parking study in 1,000 years, because in a borough the size of Emmaus, a parking deck is the most ludicrous idea you could ever have. And why you pay money to even study that is not an intelligent thing. There are things that you have to do studies for, because in order to get, for example, DCNR grants,
Yep.
you got to do a stupid study because the state
Requires it.
it is a pain in the ass and makes you do that. Things that you already know. You know, I already know that we could develop the soccer fields better, or build the trail, and we already know what the route's going to be, but we're going to spend $30,000 to get to that point.
Yep.
But there are things like parking. Really, you spend money on a parking study?
Yep.
The first time I heard that, I was like, go through town with a camera and walk and draw pictures. You can tell where,
The only issue was Sunday afternoon,
you know.
and it was downtown because of the farm.
I mean, you spend $25,000 on a study, and then, just like you said, you never used it.
No?
I think that you've got other studies that you've never used.
And that-
Southside
and I-
plan.
Yep.
I mean, you pulled down and said, "Look, this would be a perfect project." That's what I think. I think you really need to start doing that. Is take those studies. Take that Main Street study. Take that Southside study. Take, you know, there's regional recreation studies. There's all these studies that are already done for us. Start pulling them out. Start saying, you know, this would be a legitimate project. This wouldn't. And not necessarily that you're going to do it, but
No, but at
what
least
would it
you're
take?
thinking.
What's it going to take to do that out there? Florida's not going to be the answer. I mean, it'll be part of the answer, but it's not going to be the answer. What
Right.
else? What else is there?
Just being creative.
Yeah.
Somehow being creative.
I think that I mean, I've got a whole shelf full of studies down there in my office of studies they've done. I mean, it was just like, you know, I mean, Mr. Donchez has pointed out 100 times, you spend $35,000 on baseball field drawings that, quite honestly, we're at a point where they're doing work at the baseball field, and guess what? Nobody pulled out one of those drawings.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so what do? You wasted money on a baseball field drawing, because they really, I mean, they're doing $20,000 or $50,000 of work, and nobody pulled out a drawing and looked at it. You know, I mean, that's where your studies are a waste of time if you just do the study because, hey, we got a $20,000 grant, right? I mean, and I'm glad you guys are cognizant of that, but you know, you don't have to reinvent the work. You can actually just pull out what they've already done and start looking
Yeah, I
at it.
don't really want to go out and get
Yeah.
studies done for anything.
Right, absolutely.
They're going to come at you on the 26th or whatever date your next CRD committee meeting is,
Yeah.
and they're going to say they're going to present. They're going to want to do a traffic study for that roundabout, which
That's $5,000.
you know, I'll be honest with you. I think a roundabout is a great thing. Is a roundabout at that intersection with 18,000 cars going through there in a day a great thing? With five,
No
you know,
way.
what, 4 red lights before you get to the downtown or something like that?
We call that ambulance alley.
Yeah, right. I
You got
mean,
the ambulances coming up from the south.
you're going to have to build a ramp so they can jump everything. You know, is that a great idea? No. But you know, they also are going to ask you. You know, they would like to basically do, I guess you call it a West End study. You know, they want to look at that entire corridor
That's been talked about
that way.
before.
You know, so that's what they're going to show up here and ask you to do again. And
No, I'd rather us focus on, like
You
you
guys-
said, the economic
well, yeah.
development. You have buildings up there that aren't utilized.
don't get me wrong. You have
down here.
beautiful Emmaus, and then when you get out towards, you know, from like 10th Street to, you know, Cedar Crest, it is blah because it's all cars and it's business, and you know, it's not the most attractive side of your town, but you know what, you can't always fix everything, and if you do a study, what are you gonna do? Because you already have a dozen other studies sitting here you haven't done anything with.
Well,
So-
Shane, on this cell tower thing, is that how do you want to go about it? Is that something you want to take on? You wanna
Well,
do-
it's kind of one of those
just
things
to check it
where-
out, to see if it's even viable?
Yeah, but it's not like I can call my cell phone rep. You know,
No,
I
I
mean,
understand that. I'm
I
just saying-
guess I don't know. I don't even know who to. Like for me, a lot of things are easy because I have in my head, okay, I know a point person or somebody
Yeah.
that's done it with this person. If Brian knows somebody that's done it, then it'd be easy for me to contact and
Well, I
start
know
that.
that,
but-
he said, yeah, I don't think it's done it, but he said he knows the rep.
Yeah, but for me to like call my rep that sells us cell phones, that's not.
You don't call the salesman at the
No.
AT&T?
No, I'm not gonna show up at Verizon Wireless and say, hey, by the way.
I'm gonna do this tower thing.
And usually, like AT&T and Verizon, they can tell you right away. Look, you know, we have a 4G tower over in Allentown, and it reaches
Yep.
so far. And quite honestly, we don't need it.
Right, that's what I mean, even if it's viable, that's
Yeah.
the whole deal.
So I mean, once.
All right, we'll just leave it on there.
Well, we can find, you know, once we find a point person who like who to contact.
Because I know you got other issues on the table. I mean, that's not really priority, so. Like if you get like half hour or something.
Something like that would probably be squashed within minutes once you find out, you know, or say, oh, actually,
If the right person called.
we've been looking at, you know, something in that area, but they'll be able to tell you, you know, we have towers here, we have towers here, we have towers here, and they're all
Well, there's been
within range.
proposals. The reason there's also been proposals years ago on Ridge Manor, the senior high rise. So.
But who knows? I mean,
But
if they did it, if they put one in Allentown, that covers probably all the
Well,
way
let's take
lower
it
back.
down and bring it over.
Take it down.
Yeah, bring it over. Cut it.
Wonder if I can put one in my backyard and get $500 a month.
Oh, because you're right. Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, right.
Oh, see that? All of a sudden, I'll do that right now.
That's my idea, by the way.
All right, motion to adjourn. All right. Anything else? Nothing? Second. All right, all in favor?
All in favor, aye.
All right, this motion. 5:38.